This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, February the 13th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's back in the producer's chair. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a shout in the queue and on the air. The number to dial if you're in the St. John's metro region is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, it's toll-free long distance 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So happy Pancake Day to those who celebrate. Of course, it's also Shrove Tuesday. I don't know how many families go with the old traditions of, putting the pancakes together with the buttons and the quarters and the variety of little knickknacks to signify one thing or another. Anyway, it's Pancake Day. And just a gentle reminder for those of you who have a special Valentine in your life, today you better get out and get it before the storm hits tomorrow. And, of course, Valentine's Day, pretty much simply a Hallmark holiday, but some people enjoy it. And there you go. Right, as heard Brian Medore mentioned during the VOCM newscast, Dawson Mercer last night with his 15th on the season, his 25th point in 51 games, and of course his 215th consecutive game as a pro, has never missed an NHL game since he first began. All right, I want to say good luck to the crowd at the Avalon Celtics Minor Hockey Club. So they have applied to become the next Kraft Hockeyville. It requires a significant amount of support, and of course, there's been a variety of minor hockey associations in this province that have been awarded the big prize from Kraft Hockeyville. So this go around, let's see if we can put some support behind the Avalon Celtics. So simply go to your Google machine and put in Kraft Hockeyville to come up with the link right there. Also, there will be the Avalon Celtics page. You can offer a note of support regarding your experience at the DF Barnes Arena, which is really quite great. And that's, of course, a historically important Avalon Celtics minor hockey club. So please support them. All right. Every time this story gets any attention in the media, I'm always amazed just how many people get upset about it. So it's the concept of a 4-day work week. So the folks at the Canadian Mental Health Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, after about a 6-month pilot, are now adopting formally a 4-day work week. And they say, the pilot had exceeded expectations. Significant improvement in employee well-being, reduced stress levels, increased job satisfaction. All the while, of course, maintaining operational efficiency. Now, of course, this is not me pushing for a 4-day work week here because we're a 7-day week operation. I'm always going to have to work 5 days a week. But for companies that have given it a shot, it's the concept of live to work or work to live. So there was the largest global trial of the 4-day work week that took place in the United Kingdom. So there was a bunch of researchers inside a group called Autonomy, researchers at Boston College and the University of Cambridge. Nearly 3,000 employees took part in this particular program. 15% of the employees who participated said no amount of money would convince them to go back to working 5 days a week. In some people's minds, I guess this translates to simply being lazy. But just think about it. Even in some very busy workplaces, how much time throughout the course of the day is actually, quote-unquote, wasted? Or you're kind of twiddling your thumbs, or there's a break in the action, or meetings that last an hour that could legitimately be 15 minutes. So here's what some of the results were. So employees reported a variety of benefits. Better sleep, lower stress levels, better personal lives and mental health. The revenue stayed broadly the same across the course of the 6-month trial, but it rose 35% on average when compared to a similar period from previous years. Resignations decreased. Employee turnover is a big deal for companies because the cost of training and or retraining people is one of the biggest line items. So apparently it worked. Of 61 companies that took part in the trial, 56 said they would continue to implement 4-day work weeks after the pilot ended. 18 said they'd shift would be permanent. 2 companies are extending the trial. Only 3 companies out of 61 said they did not plan to carry on with the element of a 4-day work week. So it looks like, if you are asked to work, say, 32 hours a week versus 40 hours a week with 100% of the pay, that just compresses maybe your attention to detail to get the work done. Productivity remained quite high in the companies that took place here. Revenue broadly the same. Profitability and productivity up. Less turnover with the employees. A content employee is an effective employee, I would suggest. So I got a bunch of emails in reference to that particular story yesterday. Some people think it's just plain and simple nonsense or reflects the lazy nature of today's workforce versus the days gone by. But Anyway, they're moving towards it at the Canadian Mental Health Association and achieving and maintaining their operational efficiency. You want to take it on? We can do it. All right, let's talk a little bit of travel. So whether you want to talk about the WestJet plan for a thrice weekly flight from St. John's International to London's Gatwick, you want to talk about the ongoing saga and cynicism associated with the Stephenville Airport, you want to talk about Marine Atlantic, you want to talk about the Harbour Grace Ocean Enterprise, the shipyard out in Harbour Grace. At the peak, they had some 80 people working there. It was a bit of an 11th hour drama associated with who was going to be the successful bidder, and it turns out Blaine Sullivan will indeed be the person buying, hopefully expanding and bringing additional business to the Harbour Grace shipyard. Former majority holder Kevin English challenged it in court at the 11th hour. That has been rejected, but good luck to Mr. Sullivan and everyone employed at the Harbour Grace shipyard. And then, look, I don't know. Sometimes it is kind of curious with all of the massive issues facing us, the incredibly complex issues facing governments, provincially and federally and municipally. Some things just get the attention and the consequent news releases, which some people will roll their eyes at. You know, there is a place to attend to the small things, all the while focusing on the big things. Whether or not you think Verbo makes its way to the 8th floor Confederation building and or the minister responsible for tourism, debatable. So the minister responsible, of course, is Steve Crocker, and he spoke with the Verbo leadership. And this is all about an ad they had on, right? It played on the Super Bowl. It played on the Grammys. Dave Williams tells me some 123 million people watched the Super Bowl, so it's not insignificant. And, of course, it had, some run-down accommodations, and over it was the audio sound bed was Eyes to Buy, right? Some people are really quite offended. Verbo says it's about poking fun at the competition, not at people in this province. And, of course, if you're offended, so be it. It's not for me to tell you whether or not you should or should not be offended by this particular ad. But anyway, on we go. A couple of things. Even inside the lyrics, there's not one image of a boat. It's just this kind of lowbrow advertising, pretty lazy stuff. And, yes, people might think that is unfair and unfortunate and condescending. And if you want to take it on, we can do it. Whether it be the angle that the Premier talking about it or the minister responsible. Because, yes, in the big scheme of things, pretty small potatoes, I would suggest. If you don't follow Pat Boyle on Twitter, do it. Pat's from Pat's from Mount Pearl. And he's a jazz musician, a trumpet player, a bit of a musical savant. He's a professor out at the University of Victoria in British Columbia. So when the government sent out their news release on Twitter, Pat, there's a thing you can do called quote tweet. So you capture it, and on top of it, you can put in your own thoughts on whether or not the government is on the right track or the other way. But Pat's quote tweet is, Eyes to Buy, remember, is the song in question here. Pat's tweet is, hip your partner Sally Verbo. I mean, that's absolute gold. It's absolute gold and a little bit of fun inside that particular conversation. Let's move off to what is not fun. Yesterday, like many people, sat in absolute frustration, listened to the country's Auditor General, Karen Hogan, talk about the absolute abysmal, shameful, incompetent or corrupt approach to creating the ArriveCAN app. Now, right off the bat, we had a well-understood paper document for border declarations. I don't even think this was required in the first place. And look no further than the fact that once it was made optional, very, very few people are using this ArriveCAN app. But so, here's what the Auditor General, paraphrase what she had to say. So, the Procurement Canada and the Public Health Agency of Canada and Canadian Border Services Agency repeatedly failed to follow good management practices in the contracting, development, and implementation of the ArriveCAN application. She says this is probably the first example that I've seen such a glaring disregard for some of the most basic and fundamental policies and rules. Moving on further, this is where it's absolutely appalling. We didn't find records to accurately show how much was spent on what, who did the work, or how or why contracting decisions were made, and that the paper trail should have existed. So imagine. We're not talking about billions, but this is just a clear example of whether it be the incompetence or the corruption or the lack of attention to detail and the reckless spend of my money when we talk about procurement. Imagine, no paper trail. To move on further, just based on the information available to the Auditor General and not enough information to even associate a final price tag, she estimates it costs $59.5 million. Then you talk about even some of the companies that got the work. Even inside the Canadian Border Services Agency, estimated that $12.2 million of the $59.5 million estimate could have been unrelated to ArriveCAN. So what does that mean? We're not entirely sure. Then you look at the company that had some of the work, and some of the money. GC Strategies. So they basically copy and pasted what came from the government to go to tender, very narrowly written and very restrictive. And so consequently, some people, the optics are, the fix is in. Companies are predetermined when it comes to procurement dollars and work with the federal government. But no paper trail, we can't even figure out exactly how much it cost. It's atrocious, simply and utterly atrocious. So the ministers responsible, Leblanc and Duclos, little bit, the standard political gibberish. We thank the Auditor General for her findings and will implement her recommendations and up and down the line. But how does this happen? How do things like this happen? It's been long questioned as to whether we needed the app in the first place or the prior number of estimated costs at $54 million, and then to hear how it unfolded, what the Auditor General was able to figure out. It's estimated that 76% of the $59.5 million went to companies that did zero when it came to the back-end work and the creation and the finalization of the app. 76% of $60 million to companies that had nothing to do with it. They were just middlemen in it. So that's absolutely, it's appalling. It really, truly is. And it's not the huge number, but it's the whole issue of procurement, right? For it to be fair and transparent. And in this case, transparency was unable to be achieved because there's not even an adequate paper trail to determine who got the money, how it was spent, even how much was spent. So anyway, that one had me frustrated yesterday afternoon, and I'm sure many of you frustrated as well. Let's stick with the federal legislation here for a second, and this one is absolutely important. Look, cybercrime and hacking and malware is already a major problem, and it's only going to get worse. There's a piece of legislation that's been stalled in Parliament for quite a long time now. It's Bill C-26. It was brought forward in the spring of 2022. So it's in an effort to compel companies in the finance, telecommunications, energy, and transportation sectors to either shore up their cyber systems against attacks or face expensive penalties. For example, in the world of banks, financial institutions, priority number one, attacks reported by banks in Canada jumped from about 10 incidents in 2022 to 28 in 2023. So that's a huge increase in that type of cyber activity, cyber crime. So if we don't have the focus and the attention of governments to ensure, now I don't even know why we should have to have legislation to ensure that all the aforementioned industries do the very best they can to be as protected as humanly possible, because my data is important to me. And if and when you have my data, I want to know that you have a very robust department working day after day to identify vulnerabilities and shore them up, to close the gaps. So that piece of legislation, government just moves very slowly, but the cybercrime world is moving very rapidly, and so just about time that we see that bill get through Parliament and enacted. And again, amazing that we'd have to threaten any sectors of the economy with major fines not to do their best to protect their information, whether it be their own proprietary information, intellectual property, and my data. So that's been stalled in Parliament for far too long. Another piece of federal business, and you know me, we can talk about anything under the sun here provincially, nothing too small either. Municipal issues, let's do it. But this again is in Ottawa. And so there was a private member's bill tabled by Charlie Angus, who is an NDP member of Parliament. And it's putting a focus on ads from oil companies. Now, there's already rules and laws in place about false advertising. There may indeed be the concept of greenwashing in some of the oil companies' ads when they talk about reclamation of land or what have you, talking about carbon sequestration or carbon storage and all the rest. But Mr. Angus here is taking a page out of a book that was written in the 90s, when there was legislation tabled and passed that banned the advertising of cigarettes, tobacco products on TV. But this is becoming a problem in-house for the NDP. NDPers out west not happy with this, and I would suggest there's plenty of politicians and individuals in this province not happy with it either. It might indeed be creating a problem that's not even there. If there's legislation already in place about false advertising, this does put a big, keen focus, and many people in the country will agree with Mr. Angus, with fossil fuel companies and the way they advertise their operations and the greenwashing, as I mentioned prior. But anyway, that's a leap down the road, which is causing problems inside the NDP, provincially versus federally. Mr. Singh, Jagmeet Singh, the leader nationally of the NDP, saying, we're a party united, and you can predict what they're going to say just about every time. Anyway, let's move back to the province. Someone, or actually a few people, sent me along, I'm thinking it was a Facebook post, about concerns that someone out in Portageois has about some neurological symptoms that she's been suffering, memory loss and balance issues. So she sent out her blood work. The samples apparently came back as positive for a glyphosate. That's a pretty common herbicide. Now, that has not been substantiated by anybody else, but to allay the fears of people in the region, Portageois is now going to go down the road of testing the water once again to ensure that there isn't the presence of this glyphosate. No one else in the community has reported these types of symptoms, but when you take the broader stroke picture about water safety, and we have to be very careful, of course we do, and I sometimes forget how lucky I am to live in a part of the province where I can turn on the tap and get some nice, clean, clear, fresh drinking water, very much unlike many parts of the province. So we'll follow along with this story to see what the results are coming from Portageois and their town manager, who has said, yep, officials are aware of the concern and are going to do the additional testing. You know, when you talk about boil order advisories, last time I looked, there was like 156 boil water advisories here in the province. Some of them had been in place for decades. So for the folks on Portageois, even if they'd like to call in this morning, tell us where they are in the process and anything in addition to it. And it's good because if people have those types of fears, because it can be obviously quite dangerous. So that's what's happening out there. How are we doing on the telephone there, David? So lots of conversation yesterday about the possibility for an expansion of the recreational food fishery. Of course, that gets the attention of people here in the province who are interested in it. Had a couple of very good calls yesterday about it. You know, one from a commercial harvester talking about the tonnage allowed for certain parts of the province for unreported catch. Unreported catch. We're not even 100% sure what that means. Maybe it's about the food fishery. Maybe there's something else attached to it. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. And just a couple of quick ones. So, it's Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week. I think sometimes there's a distinct misunderstanding of just how difficult and important a job it is to be working in the K-12 system. But then again, you know, you talk about this education accord and whatever the transformation or the modernization of education looks like. It's probably due, given the fact that we've seen some pretty dramatic stories about the decline in the math, science, and reading scores, which is extremely concerning, to me anyway. So if you want to take that on, we can do it. We're also wondering, what has been the upside or the outcome of blending the Newfoundland and Labrador English-speaking school district into the Department of Education? Where did it result in any savings that could be reinvested into the system itself? We don't really know. I think the same thing could be said for the NL Health Services and the amalgamation of 4 regional health authorities. You know, what has been achieved as a result? Did we create a behemoth that is unwieldy and unmanageable? I don't know. And on that note, David Diamond, who's the CEO of NL Health Services, he has been since 2014 and oversaw the amalgamation. He's now retiring. His last day is sometime in June. The government has begun the recruiting process. Oh, no, they haven't. They will begin the recruiting process in the coming weeks. But 2 big questions. You know, what was achieved with those 2 amalgamations? There had to be some identified redundancies and overlaps. There must have been some savings achieved. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a breakdown and how that money that was saved is going to be spent. We're on Twitter, where VOCM Open Line follows there. Our email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, we're going to have a great chat with Dave. He wants to kick it off, talk about obstetrics services in central Newfoundland. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 1. Dave, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Good morning to you.
And how are you today, sir?
Doing grand, thanks. How about yourself?
Well, same here. Just on to a topic that kind of caught my interest as of the past couple of days. And it once again is related to healthcare and delivery thereof in my region in Western Newfoundland. I guess in particular a comparison to other parts of Newfoundland, and then again how this all lends itself together in terms of priority and planning and whatever with our government. And I'm talking about the issue that's been most recently has arisen as a discussion of obstetrics and the return of obstetrics to the Gander facility, and I do believe in a probable upcoming some kind of a rally or show of support to have those services. I don't even like to use the word protest anymore. We'll say show of support. To have those services returned to Gander, and in all fairness, I can honestly say that I agree with their quest and I agree with Central's take on having lost it in the first place and their need and want, I guess, desire to have it returned. But
it's happening very shortly. They've got 3 of the 4 obstetricians hired, nursing staff in place. The unit has been renovated. So we're told by NL Health Services that it's early this year, which means quite soon, I would think.
yes, and I think it lends itself to right now that somebody calls out exactly the priority, the planning, and even the show of respect that exists within government right now, should they actually have even considered this first before returning obstetrical services to Stephenville Hospital, which had a neonatal unit built in the hospital as part of its design when the hospital was built. It operated for a few months, then they closed it down flat. And that's decades ago, Patty. We have prior lost these services. We have every bit the need of these services and more than Central does, and that's easily qualified and quantified. It's a statement that probably requires that. So I'll do exactly that right now.
Well, in 2021, there were 35 births in Stephenville. In 2021, there was 105 births in Grand Falls, Windsor.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Grand Falls, Windsor is no different in terms of what they do, and they had their neonatal center there. There were 21 births in Stephenville, but don't forget something. Most of our births took place in Corner Brook. The only ones that took place were the ones that just ultimately had to happen, and then they were dropped and ran to Corner Brook for the rest of the maternity services and the rest of what happens after a baby is born.
I think those numbers are based on people from the community that have given birth versus people that delivered at one hospital or another.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I can go out and Google how many births in Bay St. George or how many births in Stephenville Crossing. Yeah. So in Gander in 2021, there were 95 births.
Yep. The fact of the matter is that the need for these services nearby in our zone, I mean, you have areas such as Cape St. George mainland, you're talking 2 hours minimum to make the run to Corner Brook. Burgeo is 3. Cape Ray, you're talking another couple of hours, 2 hours plus. In central Newfoundland, they have a couple of fully fledged hospitals. They have far more specialists in that region, far more GPs in that region. I do not downplay their desire to have their obstetrics back, but I would hesitate to say that their need was higher than ours. Now, if you want to use basic statistics of how many births there were in Stephenville versus Corner Brook or how they were classified, I'm going to tell you that any 1 year, I'm pretty sure that even at 21, those are the number of births from just Stephenville and not the entire region. That would not be people who just bypassed Stephenville because they could not have babies there. I'm sure those numbers would be higher.
Oh, sure. If you talk about an entire catchment area, but I guess the same could be said for Gander, Grand Falls, Windsor. You know, how many people would have used that hospital that don't live in either one of those communities proper, but that would be their go-to place? Like, there's a full obstetrics unit in St. Anthony, and there was 40 births there in 2021. So I suppose when these types of decisions are made about what type of clinic, what type of specialist will be in one part of the province or another, would be pretty much, and I think it would be and should be based on just the frequency of needing that type of support, that type of doctor, that type of unit in place. I suppose that's how they make the decisions. You would hope.
No, I'll add something to that. Yes, that would be part of it, but I'll also add to this. Newfoundland is a big spot. I'm, for one, don't believe in any of this 15-minute cities or whatever they're calling this new design or new way. If it means that I got to move somewhere to a centralized location or whatever, I've seen just about everything that can happen with centralization and clustering in terms of...
Yeah, but that issue, that's municipal planning issue. That's not about where healthcare services are put by the province.
See, I think they run hand in hand, don't they, Patty? How can you make proper municipal planning and plan on having these services and be able to attract people to your area without it? I mean, these type of things are reasons sometimes that people make decisions on where they live.
Oh, sure. But my point is that municipal planners, they can't incorporate opening a clinic because they don't have the authority and or the horsepower and or the decision-making available to them. It's just that, you know, when we talk about municipal planning there, it's access and time to all the amenities that that the municipality can already understand and can interact or entice these types of things, whether it be grocery stores or farmers markets or bus stops and that kind of stuff, as opposed to healthcare clinics, because they have legitimately no ability to establish one. That's all I meant by it.
Okay, makes sense. For me, I guess basically, unless people have a shutdown date or some kind of a shelf life left on our actual viability as a region elsewhere, it doesn't make any sense to not have one of the most basic services I think that a hospital should have. Even the ability, shall we say, to handle birthing at Stephenville Hospital, if there's anything complicated that they have to make the exodus after the birth to Corner Brook or whatever for a difficult or somewhat chancy birth or whatever, that these take place in Corner Brook. But, I mean, in all honesty, from what I've been told and the little bit of research I've been able to do on this, it's not really a big deal to be able to have birthing and the ability to have this take place in Stephenville Hospital at all. The system is there, and it's not, like you're going to require anything other than doctors that are capable of delivering babies. And elsewhere, this is done through midwifery and this type of thing. So I can't see that Stephenville Hospital is not capable of taking on this role in at least the most basic fashion. Should there be a need for further care for the child or the mother after the birth, I guess Corner Brook is the next option. But one thing, the options have become very clear. You either leave your hometown if you're too far away and you be close, so it probably means packing up and getting in a hotel for a couple of weeks before you can have your baby. The other option is to risk running for that hospital and not having time and having your baby born in the cab of a car, or in some cases the back of an ambulance if you're unlucky enough to be transported to Corner Brook in that fashion. But it's not always an option when it comes to birthing a baby. So I think the most basic of it all should be available in our hospital, which I'm sure is not part of either the Health Accord's plan or maybe somebody else's plan on how they would like to distribute healthcare services throughout the rest of Newfoundland. I don't know if that's based on the bottom line of a balance sheet or a budget, but by area need and by regional need, we need obstetrics back in Stephenville Hospital every bit as much as most any region in Newfoundland. I would argue probably more than most in Central.
I really don't know, but I assume, back to the beginning thoughts, I assume the placement of these types of units, clinics, and specialists has to be about patient volume and frequency of need. But I know where you're coming from. I wonder what the percentage is of births across the province that would be deemed quote-unquote routine. Because that's where, when we talked about the midwife program coming, and it started in Gander, and it seems to have stalled out here. So whether it be midwives playing a much more prominent role in different parts of the province and doulas for post-delivery care, that's going to be part of the future. It'd be nice to know where we are with midwives. My grandmother on my father's side delivered, I don't know, I'm just going to guess, hundreds of babies in the St. Mary's Bay area over the years. And so, between the obstetrician, the registered nurse, the midwife, and the doula, we've got to be very careful about how we distribute or how we implement some of these clinics, whether it be obstetricians or otherwise in the province. And I don't know what the answer is. I really have no earthly idea. But anyway, I'll give you the final thought, Dave.
Well, based on that point that you just made, if your grandmother probably delivered 100 babies, that would have been in people's bedrooms, probably in the living room.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not in the hospital.
Hundreds.
Yes.
Hundreds.
Now, there you go. Okay, now there's the comparison. Do you think that it makes sense that if a baby could be born safely, and if that type of approach to babies being born is even being considered in Newfoundland, why would they not consider having an accomplished and capable doctor in Stephenville Hospital? Who knows? Maybe we could even have more than one on call from now and again. Stephenville Hospital at most times is only a large clinic. But why will we not consider having the ability, Stephenville as your first option to have a baby versus the Trans-Canada Highway, when the tradition years ago was to have a baby born at home in somebody's bedroom? The argument that was made when they removed these services from Stephenville Hospital in the first place was that you had to be all kinds of high-tech and capable to be able to deliver this service. So it was best pushed off to Corner Brook. Stephenville wasn't capable of handling it.
Fair enough.
We're
And
considering midwifery now. Stephenville Hospital is as good as that.
Okay. And, people that I speak to who are doctors, and they say quite plainly, if I'm a surgeon, I want to be cutting. If I'm an obstetrician, I want to be delivering babies. And so when we talk about the ability to recruit a healthcare professional, they want to be active. They want to do what their training accommodates them to do.
Yes.
So that's to a man, to a woman, that's what they all say. Surgeons want to cut, obstetricians, OBGYNs, they want to deliver babies. So
we lost a surgeon for that great reason. He was a great fellow, and he's gone off. He's in the Northwest Territories now because he came here with huge capabilities, huge desire to be able to deliver that service, and basically all they allowed him to do, I won't put it how Mayor C. Stein put it because I'm on the air, but basically all he was doing was using a scope on people, and he was capable of so much more. But these decisions weren't made, as well as the same decisions that were foolish that Western Health made, where you'd have the doctors were getting put on waiting lists for operating rooms, when 50 miles away in Stephenville, 2 perfectly set up operating rooms lie dormant. People waited for days and weeks for operations that could have happened in Stephenville, but Western Health and their deciders said, no, we'll put these on a waiting list. You'll wait and you'll get it done in Corner Brook. We won't operate those rooms.
I appreciate the time, Dave. Thanks for the call this morning.
Thanks, buddy.
You're welcome.
Take care.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about Chromebooks in schools. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. All right, let's go. Line number 2, say good morning to the independent member from Mount Pearl Southlands. That's Paul Lane. Paul, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm not doing too bad at all. Paddy, before I
before we get into it, just based on a social media post, do you have any youngster in Mount Pearl you'd like to congratulate for any accomplishments?
Hey, listen, we got a lot to be proud of in the Pearl, and I wear that criticism or jab as a badge of honor, to be honest with you.
I thought it was funny, and as a bit of an inside joke, but anyway.
It was hilarious.
Yep.
Paddy, I did, though, just want to give a quick little shout-out, though, in the meantime, to all the volunteers that have been facilitating our Mount Pearl Frosty Festival. It's been a great week, and there's still a few more days to go, and, you cannot put a price or a value on the volunteers that make this happen. So big shout-out to all of them, and we certainly appreciate all they're doing to continue with the great community spirit that Mount Pearl is so well known for.
Fair enough. Yeah, they always do quite well. I mean, you compare the turnouts to festivals and all these community gatherings in Mount Pearl, St. John's, there is a different feel to community out in Mount Pearl. I will grant that.
Yeah, I think, I think what it comes down to is that, while, by our standards, I guess we're sort of a larger area in our province, but we're still small enough that you still have that community feel. And, a lot of people know each other. We have so many community groups, organizations, they all work together on projects and stuff. So, we're able to keep that community feel and put off events like Frosty Festival every year. And I think it's wonderful. So, again, big shout out to all those volunteers that make it happen.
Fair enough.
Yep. Paddy, I just wanted to, raise the issue about Chromebooks. I heard, we've heard the Premier and the Minister come out now, and they're talking about, the education accord and, reimagining our education system. Our Premier loves to reimagine things, healthcare, and now, of course, our education system. And fair enough. I mean, I don't have a problem with, looking at what we're doing and seeing, we can do things better. Now, albeit a lot of people would say, rather than doing another set of consultations and studies, we would probably be better off if we just simply dealt with some of the things that we know need to be dealt with, i.e., reducing class sizes and more resources in the classroom for children with special needs and so on. But with all that aside, I just wanted to raise an issue around the Chromebooks, because I had a teacher reach out to me last week with a concern, and I did reach out to the Minister last week, but I have not received a response, not yet anyway. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But the concern is, like I said, is around Chromebooks, and of course we know that when the pandemic, started or shortly thereafter, and schools, well, it was decided, of course, that schools were going to be shut down by Dr. Fitzgerald and so on. The government invested an awful lot of money in Chromebooks for virtual learning. I'm not sure what the number is, but I'm pretty sure it was in the millions of dollars. It was a lot of money anyway for Chromebooks, albeit perhaps a lot of that funding may have come from the federal government in terms of cost sharing, whatever. I'm not sure what the breakdown was and who paid for what, but it was a lot of money put into it. So I know that there are schools, and certainly the teacher who reached out to me in their particular school, they've continued on with the use of Chromebooks. And basically, everything they do now is based on using the Chromebooks in terms of the instruction, in terms of homework, assignments, notes. Like, there's nobody now, like teachers not standing up at the chalkboard and students are no longer, sitting there with a notepad and a pencil and writing down notes and so on. The notes are provided in the Chromebooks and so on. And they fully integrated. And so, the bottom line is we're in the 21st century. It's the digital age, I guess. So that's the way things are and the way things are going. So
sure,
it makes sense that that's what we're doing. The issue that's been raised, though, is that this teacher told me that she had a couple of new students this year that I guess they were international students and so on. Well, there were some that came from other provinces, and there was a couple of students as well that from other countries, perhaps Ukraine or whatever the case might be. And so he went looking for Chromebooks for the students, I should say, and they've been told apparently that no, we're not providing them anymore. So
yeah, the program is over.
That raises a big question for me as terms of what is the plan going forward. Are these students now going to be sort of left behind and disadvantaged? What happens? Are we saying after spending all this money on Chromebooks that we're going to go back to chalkboards and notepads and pencils, and we're going to just scrap the whole idea of technology that we've been using? Will parents be expected to pay for Chromebooks? Are we going to be fundraising for Chromebooks? Like, what is the plan? Are we going to go backwards instead of forward?
I think, in the world of hybrid, I think there's a place for it in this conversation. Just for context, so people know what we're talking about here, was in 2020 where there was a purchase of Chromebooks for junior high and high school students, not the lower grades. It was $20 million was the initial number. So I know that has now ceased, but I don't know if people are going to be left out and left to fend for themselves or fundraise or what have you, but I do think there's a bigger, and I brought this up last week, I guess it was. It's one thing to use the digital technology available, and of course that's going to be a big part of everybody's day-to-day life, and so we have to incorporate it in the province's schools. But there's something to be said for writing your own notes. There truly is. If anyone's interested in this at all, if you just Google up the benefits of learning cursive writing, you'll come up with thousands of pieces of research about the upside for brain activity, the ability to write, to read, to spell, and how the brain reacts when you're trying to move the pen or the pencil across the paper to form the letters, and how words interact with each other. When that's lost, basically, you can read a summary of any piece of research that you find about it. It says, basically, memory medic, cursive can make children more intelligent. So I think that as a lost art, for the sake of ease, because if you think about it, you just pick up your own pen and write the word island, and then compare that feeling on what the brain does as opposed to simply type ISLAND. All the keys feel the same. There's no actual, what's the word I'm looking for here? Improves dexterity in the whole bit. So I think, to expand your conversation about people not being left behind, which I think is important, it's maybe abandoning in full the ability to write. Cursive writing is probably a problem. There's plenty of people, say, for instance, around my son's age, they can't even read cursive writing. I mean, that's amazing to me. I can't read it because they never did. It wasn't part of their education. They were all online as opposed to actually reading and writing with their own pens or pencils. I think that's a bigger conversation, but anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack.
Well, no, and listen, you're not wrong, and I mean, listen, we could have a whole other conversation about that. I mean, I know that in terms of I guess prior to being an MHA and so on, we used to get where I worked, we would have summer students and so on, and I'd have them doing certain work for me and reports and whatever. And I mean, some of the stuff was atrocious in terms of the spelling, sentence structure, putting thoughts together in paragraphs, punctuation. I mean, it was like it really has been lost in many ways. And I know when we went to school, of course, you had to practice over and over again your cursive writing, as you said, your punctuations, you had to do spelling, you had your spelling tests, you used to do your times tables. A lot of that stuff is lost, and I don't think it's a good thing, but I guess at the end of the day, my concern now is I'm just wondering what the plan is as we go forward. If we are going to continue, if schools are continuing to utilize this technology, I don't know how we can say, okay, well, anyone who has the technology, because you had a computer in 2020 and you're using it, fine. If you're a new student or an international student or something, I'm sorry, you're out of luck.
Okay.
I know for international students, for example, the teacher told me that one of the functions with the Chromebooks is a language translator. So they can put, I guess you can put instructions in English and it translates to their language or vice versa, which is another benefit. But I guess we just need to know what the plan is. As you say, we spent $20 million on this technology. Are we going to continue with this technology? Are we not? Are we going to make sure, if we are, that everybody has it available to them? Are they going to have to pay for it themselves? Who's going to pay for it? These are questions we need some answers to. Like I said,
Okay.
I've written the minister. I haven't heard back yet. Maybe if she calls you at some point to talk about the reimagination of our education system,
Okay.
that could be one of the questions that could be put to her.
I can do that. Appreciate the call, Paul.
Thank you, Paddy. All the very best.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
And just out of the corner of my eye, because I do have to get to the break, so it makes an interesting point here. With the addition of the Chromebook, which of course is going to be part of learning, it simply is. The digital component is very, very real. Now, I do think we should keep the cell phone out of the children's hands when they're in class, to be honest. But we did just throw an additional pretty significant amount of weight in the kids' backpacks too. I don't know. Is that a problem? I'm not really sure. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to say good morning to the Mayor of Port au Choix. That's Donald Spence. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to the Mayor of Port au Choix. That's Donald Spence. And good morning to you, Mayor Spence. You're on the air.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for making time for the show. How are you doing?
Good.
Mayor Spence, how and when did the town first hear about this reports of potential glyphosate in the water?
We were blindsided by this as a town, a small municipality, that we never heard nothing until it blew up on Facebook and the media and social media. And we are doing everything in our jurisdiction that we can do and going above and beyond to resolve this case and to see if there's anything in the water. And we're working with the Department of Health, and they are taking it very serious. So, we're trying our best on this.
So to try our best on this is basically simply water testing, right? So has that begun?
Yes, and we thought it was just simple as getting water testing done, but it's apparently it's not that simple. Is the one place we're talking to in Ontario that they only test the non-treated water. That's to just basically take a sample of the pond. But if there's anything in our water, well, obviously it's from the tap. So we're working on getting another place or trying to get more. Well, it's new to us, and we're trying to take the information from the government and, okay, what do we do next? Where do we go? So it was decided at a council meeting that we're 100% in the support of getting this tested, and we are going to get it tested.
So what has government told you then? Because if it's more complicated than simply getting a laboratory here to do the test, where are we?
They're working with us, and they're treating it very serious, and this is basically what we know. I know we are going on getting our own test done, and they are supposed to be getting tests done too.
So the reaction in the community, I think I'd be interested in knowing a bit more about, because when a Facebook post gets spread far and wide, because I tell you, a bunch of people sent it to me, and I hadn't seen it on Facebook, so that's how I became aware of the story. Because when this resident is talking about neurological symptoms, memory loss, balance issues, things that have been happening for years, sent out blood work, and it came back positive for glyphosate. So how's the community reacted? Because I'm sure that would put some people in a tizzy or a panic pretty quickly.
Oh, Patty, it's very stressful. And, we're a council of pretty well volunteers, and we're not doctors or, it was pretty stressful on our behalf, and we're just trying our best to resolve this, and we wish that it didn't come out this way, that we had our tests done, and if there is something wrong, definitely we got to get it done. Because, obviously I got kids here in town and, a lot of friends, and we're all a close community, and we don't want to see nobody sick or nobody hurt on behalf of the council, and we are trying our best.
Of course. And, it is important to note for people listening in the Port of Schwa, the community of and or the region, the test claims have not been substantiated. So it's probably in everyone's best interest to wait and see where we go. And now if people are going to want to, add an additional layer of protection for themselves and not use the community water until the test is resolved, fair enough. That's certainly not up to me. But nothing has been substantiated here yet. So let's hope that can temper the fears in the community. Anything else on that front this morning, Mayor?
No, that's just basically what we're trying to do there. We're working and we took this very serious, and we hope it's nothing in the water, and we're going to go from there and just wait and working with the government, and hopefully we have the results in a short time coming.
Before we let you go here this morning, just in the broad strokes about your community and the region. So I do know, and I have been to the National Historic Site in Port of Schwa, which is pretty cool stuff, to talk about some of the 6,000 years of human history in the area. It's a pretty nice place to be. I've also had the opportunity to do a little bit of hiking in and around Port of Schwa, which is a gorgeous part of the province on the Great Northern Peninsula. But then comes the concept with long-term sustainability. I think the population of your community is somewhere around the neighbourhood of 800 people. What kind of cooperation do you experience on the Great Northern Peninsula? Because it's going to take all hands rowing in the same direction to really make for a long-term, sustainable, viable community.
Yes, you're 100% right there. Our community is suffering now with the announcement of the redfish, the shutdown of the cod, the decrease of the shrimp. It's tough to keep these communities going.
So, we've heard from mayors, for instance, in Englee and Conch and Radlington Bide Arm, who formalised a working group for regional economic development. Any such plans in the work for your community?
Yes, we have a few things on the go there now. Not liberal to say about it, but we're still going forward, and then we're trying to adapt with the times. And we have a lot of things on the council plate that we're moving forward. Anything
else you want to elaborate on what's on your plate?
No, not at this time.
Okay. I appreciate making time for this the program this morning, Mayor Spence.
Okay, thank you very much.
Take good care. Bye-bye. Donald Spence, he's the mayor of Port of Schwa, and that was in an effort to further allay the fears that I'm sure are very real if you're living in the community. If you see that Facebook post, because you know full well, whether it simply be word of mouth and or people using that social media platform, that news spread far and wide. And of course it would be of concern if you hear of someone who's reporting a positive test because of the blood work that's been sent along. So anyway, we'll cross our fingers and hope that's not the case and the water is not contaminated with glyphosate, which is a pretty common herbicide. So there has been some consideration given to this issue in other parts of the country as well, in Moncton, New Brunswick. So there was a doctor here who suspected that there was a bunch of his patients that had a big, wide range of neurological symptoms, and they believe that it may have an environmental origin, and some of that may be directly associated with herbicides. So it's happened elsewhere, and as you can imagine, the stories when we're talking about public drinking water and environmental impact on your overall health, when the story begins, it catches like wildfire and spreads exactly like that. Same thing, and just quickly, Mike, you can stay right there. We'll have a chat after the news. Don't want to rip you off about very much time. So whether it be you have concerns with a bunch of vaccines, and notably the COVID vaccine, now what we're seeing is also quite scary. I heard Dr. Fitzgerald being interviewed about the presence of measles. Now, there was only one case back in 2017. That person was a traveller. Our vaccination rate for measles is about 95%. But you look in other parts of the world, there were something like 44,000 cases of the measles in Europe last year. So that has really translated from COVID-19 and a vaccine to doubting what are vaccines that have been in play for decades. And 2 doses of the measles vaccine has proven to be just about 100% effective. And we know the health risk associated with getting the measles, especially when you get a bit older. So that story is really quite something. Let's check in on the Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Someone picking up on what I was talking about with the cursive writing. Look, I get it. We are absolutely going to see more and more reliance. Like, it's always amazing to me to see a very young child get in front of a computer or in front of a video game and be able to navigate it and sometimes master it in short order. It's remarkable. Very different for people, or some people my age, say for instance. Is there a place And is there any thought that if we have really well understood academic research about the overall positive impact of learning how to use cursive writing in an effort to spell, to read, to write, to formulate a sentence, to understand how words interact with each other, the brain activity that comes with using your skills with a pencil or a pen versus the tap of a nondescript button? It might sound silly in some corners, but after the show is over, the use of a pen or pencil is cognitively different than pushing any old key. And if some of the summaries, and I've gone through several reports because once I brought it up last week, I felt like I should read a bit more about it. It basically says that children are smarter when they know how to use cursive writing. And just think about how many people in your family, the younger members of your family, they can not only not write cursively, they can't read it. So I type all day, every day, but when I collect my thoughts for my opening remarks, that's all handwritten, because that's what I'm used to. I mean, that's how, the ability to retain information and comprehension of information is vastly different when you write your notes versus type your notes. Is there a place for that conversation? I don't know. Let's take a break for the news. When we come back, we're going to talk about the retirement of Dave Diamond and then whatever you want to talk about right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Okay, let's go. Line number 1. Mike, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patty.
Morning.
And I think it's good morning, too. When I read Dave Diamond is retiring, I think that the retiring should be changed to firing. I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But I've been following this since 2014 when he got in there. And I see the damage that he's done under his leadership to the morals of the management of Eastern Health, to the hiring practices, to the tendering rules and regulations or whatever we have, or guidelines that apparently there's nothing there. Everything that he's done, as far as I'm concerned, into his leadership is detrimental to the province, with hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the province, even $1 billion and more is after leaving the province under his leadership. And I just...
So, Mike, from where you sit, you think that Dave Diamond has the authority to let a contract like with Compass or Teledoc or anyone else, as opposed to the procurement office and the minister responsible?
Yes, well, the minister responsible is the one there now. He could have changed his ruling, Dave Diamond's rulings, especially with the Tendering Act. All Tom Osborne had to say was, look, we're going to go force Compass to go to tender, following our tendering rules and regulations. Tom Osborne chose not to. Now, the only one over him is now Premier Fury. Well, Premier Fury adopted this thing when he came in as the leader of the Liberals. But Tom Osborne was there, and I think he was the health minister back when Dave Diamond went there. But for our system, under democracy, to have it that the minister can give out whatever he wants to, whatever, tenders or whatever, you don't have to follow any guidelines, no nothing, just give it for whatever reason that he wants to whoever he wants to, which is ridiculous under a democracy. In democracy, we've got to have a tendering laws, rules, and regulations to go by in order that is fair for everybody. This man has hurt our local economy, like I said, our hiring practices, the tendering for work and everything else, just giving it to multi-billionaires, taking all this work out of the province. Like, everything that he's done has been negative to this province. But like you say, there is liability there with, especially Tom Osborne. Tom Osborne has probably he's been there a couple of times as a health minister, and he was there before John Hagee, and he's there after John Hagee. But Tom Osborne is responsible for a lot of this, there's no doubt. And really, there now, in order to get a new CEO, Tom Osborne should have no decision into it, and he should be taken out of that portfolio. Right now, we need somebody here that's going to look after the interest of the people of the province, not put another CEO there that's going to just do his job make his job easier by hiring on other people to do his job, which is what Dave Diamond did. All Dave Diamond has done is hire on extra contractors outside of government, give them government jobs to make his work easier because he don't know how to do it. So if, we go back into the same thing now and the same ritual with the same policies as what's there now, well, everybody knows our health care is practically finished. We're not going to be able to afford it. So what's going to happen into this now, I don't know, but I can't see it getting any worse than what it was under Dave Diamond. But we need to look after our own destiny. We can't have a loaf of bread being bought in somewhere from Montreal to Toronto into Newfoundland, trucked across the island and everything else, and then go through distributorships and everything else to billion-dollar companies to get to the health sciences. How much are we paying under his leadership for a loaf of bread? It's ridiculous, and nobody knows. Nobody is accountable. Hidden contracts. Nobody can get the information there to probably support us. Here, Ron Johnson came in and said that $800,000 Compass contract was. That's totally and utterly ridiculous. They've got a dozen different companies and more, and different contracts and everything else that we don't know anything about. That's pilfering money out of our economy, and it has to stop. And hopefully it'll stop here now, but as far as I'm concerned, it's not going to stop unless Tom Osborne is relieved. And we put a minister in there who will look after our tendering practices, go back to making it right that, look, you don't have to necessarily be the lowest price, but there's got to be a good reason for it not to be the lowest price. If a tender is written properly, then everything is all equal. The problem is right now that because of people like Dave Diamond, that whatever, we don't have the people there to properly write the tenders. So if you got a tender that got loopholes, there's somebody going to take advantage of it. And right now, we got it being done by these large corporations making a worldwide food processing and delivery to other countries and everything else. So we could be getting our food in 20 years' time from China or wherever around the world. And we got nobody producing it here. We're going to be totally dependent on food, everything being brought into this province. And to me, that's not the way to go. And everybody should be up against it, including all those people that are out there now trying to put local foods and everything into our hospitals, our schools, the penitentiary, the cafeterias and restaurants in our government. This is all going to these billion-dollar companies. Cisco worth $48 billion. The Compass, $50 million a year. We can't afford these people, and we have to be self-reliant and keep the money into the province.
Appreciate the time, Mike. Anything else quick before I take another one?
Well, like I said, I'm thoroughly happy to see Dave Diamond go. I hope I had something to do with his retirement. I would have had him fired if I could have, and I would have had him in jail if I could have. As a matter of fact, that's something that I was doing now with the latest Supreme Court ruling that I had with regards to this contract. The judge wouldn't rule on the validity of the contract. But, if anybody read this contract, you know what Dave Diamond signed. It's totally wrong and not in any way of any kind of interest for the benefit of Newfoundlanders. So we need somebody there now. And the thing is, who's going to pick him? I'd like to see Tom Osborne taken out of it. Like I said, I'm going to repeat myself now. But like I said, we need somebody there with an attitude change and a totally different direction. And we need our tendering laws as laws with penalties and with the ability for either the Auditor General or Chief Procurement Officer to be able to do their duties right and enforce it. But right now, our Auditor General is useless. The Chief Procurement Officer is useless. The tendering laws are useless. Boy, Tom Osmond go out and say, oh, give this here to such and such. He's a buddy of mine. Or give it to this other one for whatever reason they want. And there's not a thing that we can do about it, which is wrong. They've got to be held accountable. Tom Osmond has got to be held accountable for their action with the tendering laws of who's getting these contracts and whatever. And suffer the consequences if it's wrong. But right now, where are we to? Tom Osmond was up on a pedestal. And it's time for him to come down and come down to the reality of the rest of the Newfoundlanders that are in the hospital rooms, waiting for procedures and everything else with these hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the province. It's not right. But we need the leadership. Now, whether Premier Fury is going to do it, do his job responsible, and follow the proper laws, the rules, regulations to get rid of this, because not only in healthcare, these tendering laws are broken in transportation and wherever, all departments of government. So when you look at the total picture, we're in serious economic problems, that could be overcome. But we need the leadership there now, and this is our time in our lives and our history that we need leadership. So let's hear it from them. Let's hear it from the opposition.
Fair enough, Mike. Off to the break I go.
Thank you.
You take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's take that break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Jennifer, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Jennifer calling from Royal Canadian Legion on Blackmarsh Road.
Welcome to the show. Where's Bill Tizard?
I'm not quite sure. He hasn't been around much lately.
Oh, no. Hope he's okay.
No. Yeah, as far as we know, he is, yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to call in and let everybody know about our flipper or roast beef dinner. We are having March 11th, 2024. The tickets are $25, and takeout is between 4 and 5:30, and eat-in is at 6 p.m.
It usually goes pretty well, too, doesn't it, Jennifer?
Yes, yeah. We usually have a fine crowd, right? So just trying to get it out there a little bit more.
Happy to help. So it's less than a month away. $25 is good value for a roast beef dinner or a flipper dinner. So you want people to make their reservations in advance?
Yeah,
Where do they call?
You can call in to 579-8281, or you can pop by anytime. We're here from 8:30 and we don't close till 12 o'clock at night. Like I said, and there's still tickets available, so more the better.
Well, I'll tell you what, you can give us another call a little closer to the 11th of March so we can give it a final pump and hopefully sell out.
Yes, perfect. Sounds good. Or you can call 579-8300 also.
Sounds good, Jennifer. Stay in touch.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here we go. Flipper Dinner, Branch 1, Blackmarsh Road, Royal Canadian Legion. Let's go to line number 3. Good morning, Tom Davis. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. I want to start by thanking Charlie and Tom Babcock for their kind words on the show. It's nice to get people saying good things about you for a change. I want to talk about. I want to get around to talking about the exemption for secondary units, but I just want to start with a little walk down memory lane. I was looking back through past budget documents, and 2015. One councillor voted against it, Art Puttister, and he said the city could not sustain the level of spending. Since that point, we've increased our spending by 18.8%. 2017, 3 councillors voted against it, and Ian Froud, who's the gentleman that I'm running to replace, said that he had no input into the budget and it lacked transparency. So it really calls into question, if our councillors have no input into the budget, who's deciding how we spend our taxpayers' money?
Fair point. You would imagine exactly the people elected to do exactly that.
Well, I think that shows some sort of real big problem down there. If, by his account, the bureaucrats are deciding how we spend the money, and I've spoken to past councillors who have echoed that. So I want to assure people I will not be silenced if I'm elected, and their voice will be heard, both there on around the council chambers, but as well in public. I know they have 3 public relations people down there, and it worries me a little bit, the new codes of conduct, and I'm hoping that there isn't a muting by both public relations, senior bureaucrats, and by the code of conduct to be able to have these difficult conversations, which need to be had in the public sphere. And if they're not, then of course stuff like this happens. It's interesting because most of us don't really connect the dots with spending and having our taxes increase, because we have this situation where the feds and the province just spend money and borrow it. I mean, every announcement you hear the federal government or the provincial government make, every single one of them right now, that's new spending, whether it's pharmacare or it's that hotel, Comfort Inn, that is all borrowed money. However, when the city makes an announcement, it isn't borrowed money because they're not allowed to. Well, that's actually, they can borrow to finance long-term capital things, but not for operational. So we need to try and connect the dots in the city. So whenever you hear a big announcement, like for example, when they expanded the Muse Center to include a steam room and a walking track, and decided to spend $10 million extra dollars. That was money that came out of the gas tax, so I didn't borrow that. So that is money. So this year the difference is about $11 million between what last year's budget was and this year's budget. So that money could have been used to offset these tax increases, as could last year. They decided to spend $11.6 million to pay down debt. That also could have had the same impact. Now they say that would save money, but they're not doing anything to reduce their spending other than maybe paying down debt. So, we've got this challenge where it seems like there's no controls down there. The council doesn't seem to have any input into it. And we as taxpayers who are now getting our tax bills, so I just got mine, and people need to. I've spoken to a few people who have spoken to their counselors, who the counselors say they don't get a lot of correspondence. Well, I want to call on everybody to figure out how much your taxes went up, and I want you to send to the mayor, the deputy mayor, the at-large counselors, and your ward counselor. And in Ward 4, you can send it to me, votetomdavis@gmail.com. And also send it to Kevin Breen, the city manager, and also the different go online and pick as many bureaucrats as you want, and voice to them your displeasure with how they're spending your money and how it's impacting your bottom line. Like, lay it out, because I know there's a lot of people listening. And the other thing is that Councillor Ellsworth came on and said it's only $20 a month, and that's assuming your house was $300,000. And I think a really good question for Councillor Ellsworth would have been, how much did your taxes go up? Because he's not living in a $300,000 house. He owns buildings within the city of St. John's. It's way more for him than $20 a month. And I know for a lot of the residents of Ward 4 and the city in general, their taxes are going to go up a lot more than $20 a month. So we'll leave that there. But everybody, we need to be engaged in this democratic process. And obviously a lot of people need to vote, and hopefully vote for me. But regardless, reach out to your councillors, reach out to your bureaucrats.
One thing. Now, no question, a lot of the grunt work and a lot of the compilation of data through the various departments is going to be done by the bureaucrats. Of course it is. It just stands to reason. That's a big reason why they're actually there. But there is a finance committee, made up of members of council. For them not to be read in every step of the way through, because we consider a budget consultation like 30 or 60 days prior, and then the budget comes out and people pretend that's the end of the story. But the next year's budget should be starting consultations and the creation of it the day after this year's budget. So everyone should be read in every step of the way. One of the most important things that we elect anyone to do as a municipal representative, a provincial representative, or a federal representative is to adjudicate how we spend money. The end. Because everything outside of the world of spending money is directly related to spending money. Because government policy is not just words on a piece of paper, it also comes with an associated check or cash. So for people to not be involved formally and continually in the budget process is ridiculous to begin with.
Agreed. I've again been talking to past councillors, and apparently we bought $1 million snow blower at one point. It was in Swedish. Nobody could read it. It really wasn't really wasn't good for our streets, so it sat up there in the yard. And that wasn't the councillor made that decision, obviously, although maybe they got to sign off on it. But anyway, this is the type of thing that we need to be consulting. I want to get over to the water tax exemption for unused registered apartments. And there's kind of two sides of this. One side is, well, if there's 700 unused registered apartments, we want to get them used to help solve the housing crisis. And that's logical. And for people who are, sitting on them, I can't imagine why you would do it if you were an investor. But I also know there's a lot of retired people on fixed income, widowers, for a whole bunch of good reasons, don't necessarily want someone living downstairs. There is a real issue with renters, as we all know, and we hear people call. I know there's at least one senior lady who calls and talks about, damage to her home, not being able, potential violence, unpaid rent, not being able to get people out. And I know that there's a lot of people who want to stay in their home, but don't want to take on the stress necessarily of that. So what I would like to propose is, if there are people who are, investors or whatever else, and are not renting their homes, why, by all means, the $675 water tax for the 2 units, I'm all for that. However, the other thing people need to realize is, if someone has a registered apartment, it's worth around 20% more to the city as far as an appraisal goes than if it's not registered. So the difference isn't really very much if you choose. So $675 in water tax extra, or the difference in the taxes will be around $512 on average. So you're not even talking about a big difference, but I would definitely make a motion that senior citizens should be able to apply for this exemption on a case-by-case basis, and the council should, for the reasons stated, offer them that exemption and let that continue on.
There need to be a change to the law. That's the unfortunate reality. For 20 years, the exemption was offered for all the obvious reasons. And if you could prove that the apartment, albeit registered or not, was vacant, then that should be enough. Because what we're talking about here is, you can't force anyone to rent their basement apartment. There's nothing that we can do on that front. They either want to or they don't. But then the move to have to renovate your home to avoid a doubling of your water tax at $675 a year does a couple of things. You decrease the value of your own home. And whether or not people want to add a basement suite, like inside the province's 5-point housing plan, which I think is a good part of that plan, because there's an upside for both. Increase the value of my home, more revenue coming in the door, because now all of a sudden I have a renter, forgivable loan up to 50% of the cost. But this water tax exemption, apparently, it's as plain as the law does not allow to offer exemptions where taxes are supposed to be applied. So I guess that's the City of St. John's Act that the provincial government has in play, which is the governing document for this city. I guess there has to be an amendment there, because until then, I don't know if anything can change, even a motion on the floor to allow seniors to be exempt.
Well, we do it for seniors who are on OAS or GIS, and I think that's the City of St. John's call. I don't know if every municipality offers that, so I do believe we have the ability to modify that if we're motivated, and I'm motivated, and I, again, another piece in the puzzle. But
I'm not suggesting it's a bad idea, but the application of taxes is governed by legislation. And so if the City of St. John's Act, look, you're right, not every municipality might do, OAS or GIS exemptions, but we're not governed by the Municipalities Act. We're governed by the City of St. John's Act. So it would have to be something inside of there that would be dealt with legally, and an amendment offered if these exemptions are going to continue. And they should. They should absolutely be able to continue. If I have an unrented apartment where no one is using a single drop of water, paying $675 a year is counterintuitive. So I guess the motion on the floor, if I was an elected member, is let's petition the provincial government to amend the City of St. John's Act so that we continue to allow an exemption for people who are not really supposed to have to pay a tax for something that's not being used.
Yeah, if that's necessary. If that can't be done some other way. But absolutely right, Patty. I agree with you 100%. Everyone, thank you. Please consider me for your vote on March 12th. And as well, don't forget, reach out to your councillors, your mayor, your deputy mayor, and the different bureaucrats, and let them know how the new tax increases are impacting you. 13% is a lot of money for a lot of people who are really struggling.
Hear, hear. Appreciate the time, Tom. Good luck out there.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. I was going to recount the names on the ballot, but there's one fellow who's a fourth candidate in Ward 4. His name, Nicholas Hillier, is the fourth candidate, and I anticipate a chat with him prior to the by-election. He had sent me an email. I wasn't aware of his candidacy, so we put it out there. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one, speaking more to the PC member for Fairland. He's the opposition transportation critic. That's Loyola O'Driscoll. Loyola, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning?
Best kind, thank you. How are you?
Good, sir, good. Listen, Paddy, I'm calling in regarding the upcoming snowstorm now and the 24-hour snow clearing that we had discussed, I'm going to say, probably a month ago or more. But, just wondering what the plans are for the storm tomorrow when it runs into tomorrow night is what they're saying. I mean, hopefully we don't get it, but, there have to be a plan in place. And, just wondering what the government may be doing to counteract that. When it gets to 12 o'clock tomorrow night and the storm is still going, are they going to be able to keep the roads open? Are they going to have people on? They said they'd have them on call. Does that mean they're going to come in at 5 o'clock and call, or coming in and keeping the roads open from 12 to 5? That's the kind of stuff that people need to know in the area, because they get so many calls regarding 24-hour snow clearing, or just snow clearing in general. in the district alone myself, I had a person reach out to me the last snowstorm, which I think was on the 23rd of January, or probably one previous to that. I had a gentleman call me, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning, and very frustrated that his kids are going to school at 10 and his road still hasn't been cleared at 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, the storm had ended that night because I cleaned my own driveway at around 11:30, 12 o'clock that night, so I wouldn't have to do it in the morning. And at 10 o'clock the next morning, his road is still not cleared. Now, they do have to clear the main thoroughfare for sure, and they clear all the snow at the school roads as well. But they didn't have the side roads done in a lot of these small communities. And that gentleman was very frustrated. Him and his wife had to be to work for 8 o'clock, and it was 10 o'clock that the schools opened, and their road still wasn't cleared. So he was very frustrated. Come 11 o'clock, the road still wasn't cleared. So he sent me 2 emails on that the next day after the storm. And I had another call from a resident in the up in Fairland area, that the school was delayed opening because the snow clear equipment was down and the roads weren't cleared in time so it was a delayed school opening after a snow event, for the delayed till 10 or 11 o'clock that morning. So the same thing, is it equipment issue? I mean, a lot of the times, these workers are doing what they can based on, how many people are there in the depot. But, they have a hard job to do all that based on their equipment and breakdowns and stuff like that. And, the minister has to give these gentlemen and ladies the proper equipment to be able to clean these roads.
Yeah, now, what we have asked ministers over the years about these issues, with 24/7, which was only piloted in a select few depots across the province. But when the weather event, in this case a snowstorm, is ongoing, equipment remains on the road. That's the basics of the answers that I've always received, is that it might not be a case where we have a reinstatement in full of 24/7 snow clearing, but when the weather is it's ongoing, then the equipment remains out.
Well, let's hope that happens, because we got doctors and nurses, you got paramedics that have to respond to calls as well, and you also have volunteer firefighters who are in each community along the way that have to respond to calls, and if their roads are not cleaned, then they can't get out to help these people that are in need, and that's the most vital and the safety issue that's there pertinent right there in front of us, that we got to make sure that that's taken care of for sure, Betty.
Yeah, and with the pending weather, if someone in the Department of Transportation would like to add clarification or however they want to respond to this, because you're right, if there's going to be a weather event, we would hope that people will stay off the roads, but not everyone has that opportunity. There might be emergencies, and as you point out, it might be an ambulance required, so there will be circumstances where some people will have to be out, even though they probably don't want to be out. So we've got to make sure it's safe for them to do what they're out there doing because of the obvious. So someone at the Department of Transportation, either ask the Minister to give us a shout here this morning to talk about the pending storm, or simply just send me an email with clarification about exactly the protocols and procedures when these forecasts are in place.
That's right, Paddy, exactly. The last time I brought up 24-hour snow clearing, the minister comes out and says, I'm fear-mongering. It's not fear-mongering. It's about safety to people in the province right across this island. So, something that I think is a great idea. Come on and explain to us how that would happen if the storm runs into the night, and making sure that the main thoroughfares are cleared. That's a great idea for them to call in and put people at ease, that the roads are cleared. Paddy, I have one other issue, too, in my district that I wanted to bring up. We have 2 waste facilities, one in Bay Bowls and one in Cappahayden, that, they're open a couple of days a week and on Saturdays as well for people to bring not household garbage, but bulk garbage, meaning you could be a washer that's gone, or a dryer, or another, other stuff that people, tend to bring to a waste facility and drop off. They've been closed a month here now in my district, and, they're waiting for some poles to be installed, some electricity to get some warm-up sheds that they have on each facility. But the occupational health has come in, and any day that it's -7 or colder with a wind chill, then that this facility is closed. But right now it's closed permanently until they, until they find a solution to get it done. So it's a very concerning. I had a call from one of the mayors up in Fairland the weekend. I had a call from people in Bay Bowl. So, they don't take household garbage, but there's a lot of garbage that are going into these facilities that if they don't open them, they're going to be going into back roads, and then that's where the issue is. And one of the residents I spoke to in Renews yesterday, he had said that they've already gone out and cleaned up a pile of garbage that somebody dropped off. They went to the site, it's closed, so they find a side road somewhere and drop the garbage off. the volunteers and the people in the area are the ones that got to go clean it up, not the people that are dropping it off. Obviously, everybody's not doing this, but we know full well that there are people that go to these sites, they get ticked off when they go there in their clothes, and they spent all morning loading up their vehicle or their truck or their trailer, and now they go to the facility and it's closed. So what do they do with it?
Yeah, I hesitate giving them an excuse for throwing it in the woods, to be honest.
No, there's no excuse. No, absolutely no excuse. But it does happen. That's the problem. And if you keep these facilities closed, I mean, it's not going to happen in February with a big snowstorm because we're not going to be able to get to these side roads. But when you come to the spring, people are looking to clean up their areas, and these facilities are still not open. I mean, we've been waiting over a month now. The one in Bay Wolves hopefully is going to come to a close sometime soon, but the one in Renews is, they've got to go through the department, and the government, how slow that is to make everything work. I mean, here they are, the Liberal government are responsible for this and should get these facilities open. I spoke with the minister last week, and summer turns into the fall, spring turns into summer, and then summer turns into the fall, and still not done. And we're going to be into a big mess in the area. And the residents are concerned. Not everybody's doing that, like he said, and there's no excuse for it. But they got to get these facilities open, and the government are responsible to manage that, and they should have them open.
Appreciate the time, Loyola.
Thank you, Paddy. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Loyola O'Driscoll is the PCA member for Fairland. Let's keep rolling. Go to line number 2. Caller, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Mrs. Top calling. I'm calling about home care, my darling.
Okay.
See if you can answer a question for me. If you can. If you can't, that's fine.
Okay.
I want to know why it is in the system that if a friend moved in with a person, see if I can put it the right way. If you move in with a friend and you try to do home care, why is it that they're saying I can't get the job because I live in?
Okay, let me see if I understand this correctly. You are living with someone and you are willing and wanting to be their home care provider?
Yes, and she wanted nobody else, only me, because she'd been rotted over the years. And she didn't want anybody else, but she just wanted me. And I was a long-time friend, and I moved in with her because I had nowhere else to go. So when I moved in, she got Parkinson's disease, and she got that 24-hour care. And I'm just wondering now, why is this policy anybody else can get the job for anywhere living in, and I can't? I don't understand that. And they said to me, no, because I live in. That's just silliness. Because to me, there's other people right around is getting it, and I know it. And I'll give no names, but there's people out there getting it, living in. And I'm only a friend, and I'm wondering how come that the system won't give me the job, and she won't have anybody else. I came home the other day and she had everything stripped in the house because I went to pay her bills and get her groceries. And what I'm looking for is home care for her. I'm only a friend, and I wanted to work for her. She wanted me to work for her, and her family wanted me to get paid from this system. And they're telling me that I can't get anything because I live in.
I understand. So there was, I think it was then Premier Dunderdale talking about creating a program where family members could get paid for providing some home care support for their loved one, nan or pop, mom or dad.
And there's people that is her family lives in Change Islands, and she got a sister. The only sister is left is blind, and she got 3 brothers that's not well. One got dementia, and the other one is not well. And so she's living here in Cameronville, and what I'm saying is they wanted me to go to work for her because I got to be here nighttime with her because she gets out of bed and she takes off and going on with everything and going, right? And she don't want to hear talk of the old people's home. She don't want to hear talk of it. And I don't understand. I know they can go over me, Bob. I know they can. And discriminating against people, that is. I'm only a long-time friend, and I moved in with her because I had nowhere to live. When I got here and seen the situation, I decided to do the home care. And her family wants me to get paid from it, from what I do for her. And you know what? They're telling me I cannot work for her because I live in. And I think that's silly. Somebody over in Gander Bay is getting home care living in with a family member. It don't make sense.
And I don't have an answer to the question, but it's a fair one, because if I have a preferred person that I'm comfortable with and I know they're going to help me and support me and take care of me, then you are in essence their home care support worker. So how you are not eligible to be recognized as such, I really don't know the answer to that one. I'll see what kind of digging we can do.
Yeah, I know, but it's sad though. You know, the poor woman needs care 24/7. She jumped out of her bed the other night and came out in the hallway singing out for her family that's already deceased and gone. And I mean, it's a bit much. And I mean, she needs me here 24/7. If I can get 4 hours a day, and if they're willing to give me more hours, that's fine. But do something, eh?
Fair
and
enough.
I wanted to know the number for the one that hit over home care. I want to know the phone number for it, and I'm going to fight. I'm not giving up.
Okay.
And she don't want me to give up.
What part of the province are you living in?
I live in Carmenville, down here in Newfoundland. Well, just Carmenville.
Okay, so all the contact information I've ever had about the Provincial Home Support Program was always broken down into regions. Now, of course, there's still a regional representation, even though they're all amalgamated. So, for you, let's see here. Okay, I have a number, and if it's not the right one, you get back to me, and I'll get you another one.
Okay, well, give it to me slowly, please. One number at a time, so I can catch that, my darling, please.
No problem at all. Okay, I'm just pulling it up here out of my file, which is not working very quickly at the moment. Okay. I'm sorry, caller.
That's okay. You do what you got to do on your part, my love.
Okay.
Please.
So it's now up. So it's 709
709
651
67.
No, it's sorry, you asked me for one at a time. So after 709, it's 6
yeah.
5
5, yeah.
1
Yeah.
6 6
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
4.
And I'll call it back to you now and make sure I got the right number, my darling.
Sure.
709 651 6324.
That's the one I have. If you don't have any luck with that, you get back to me and David. We'll get you the next number we can find, because that was once when the health authorities were all separate. But try that one and let me know.
Okay, but like I said, this is not what they should be doing to me. You know, to me, it's stimulating. You know?
I know that.
Should be allowed to go to work.
Okay, I know it doesn't make much sense, but you go ahead and make that call. If you don't have any satisfaction with speaking to the person you need to speak with, you get back to us. I'll go back to the well and see what I can do for you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And happy Valentine's Day to you when it comes.
Take good care.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Dave wants me to take another one before the break, so that's line number 4. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. I'm calling in regard to the call from Loyola Driscoll.
Uh-huh.
I have firsthand information because someone I know works at the waste recovery facility.
Okay.
They were mandated by Occupational Health and Safety to shut down. They're not allowed to have anybody working there when the temperature is under -7 degrees, because there's no heating facilities. And once the temperatures start coming back up to above -7, they will be able to open the facility again. It has to be on a regular basis, though, several days in a row, that the temperature is okay. And I think that if anyone's got any really complaints regarding this, they should call the Eastern board there that oversees the waste facility recoveries. And they can get more information from them.
I appreciate that heads up and the temperature threshold that they work with.
Yes, And they're not allowed to have any propane heaters or anything like that because there's no ventilation, and they're not allowed to have that in the shed because that's an occupational health and safety violation. And if they try and open prior to those conditions, health and safety is going to slap a big fine on them.
Well, if that's the rules that are in place, whether or not they're the right rules or whether or not they're appropriate, we'll leave that for a different conversation. But if that's what's in play, that's what's in play.
That's right.
I appreciate the information. Thanks for the call.
You're very welcome.
Take care.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Right, bye-bye. Yeah, so you might not agree with that law or that rule or regulation, but if that's what's in place currently, then I guess that's where we are. Let's take a break. Talk away. Welcome back. All right. Welcome back to the show. Let's go line 3. Sean, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
That's kind. How about you?
Good, boy. Getting these muscles toned up now for Wednesday.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of snow coming. I guess we'll all wait and see if the forecast pans out this time.
Yes, Patty, the reason I'm calling this morning is listening to the one of the candidates in your Ward 4, Tom Davis, earlier talking about property taxes, and it reminded me of a news conference I saw last week where the new mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, and people don't remember her, she was the wife of the NDP leader in our federal parliament.
Jack Layton.
Jack Layton. And she did, she actually called a news conference and she said, no, this is not the time to have a property tax increase. There's too many people out there that are really suffering. And I'd like to echo that in this city. I own a few properties in St. John's, and it really bothers me the greatest to see. It seems like it always goes up and it never goes back. But Olivia took the property rate increase suggested by council or by her municipal government and decided to move it by 1 full point from 10.5% down to 9.5%. I sent you a copy of of her announcement.
I saw the email there, but I haven't had a chance to click it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is a very serious issue. Like people's incomes have not gone up to keep pace with what's been happening, especially where the interest rates on everything from lines of credit to loans and mortgages and so on have gone up so substantially over the last couple of years, trying to ford off inflation issues. And yet, the city which has the oldest population in the country per capita, and I just don't believe that the younger population who are trying to keep around here, grow their families here and all that, they're under a lot of pressure. And to see Olivia Chow take that leadership role in her first year as the mayor of Toronto was really enlightening and very welcomed in Toronto. But I'd like to see Mayor Breen take the very same stance and stand up there and say, we have to think of our population. We're getting very expensive here, and we really have to think of the demographic population we have.
The issue in Toronto, I think, is different than here. And, she won in a by-election over the summer. And this rate proposal would have been the highest rate hike for Torontonians in the past 25 years. So the shock to the system was very, very real. But this, whether it be an example of courage or leadership or what have you, is simply not a whole lot more than kicking the can down the road, because it would be her first budget, but she inherits a $1.8 billion structural budget deficit. So at some point, whether it be revenue increase on some side, because with the regressive approach we take to property taxes in the first place, now there'd be lots of permits and fees associated with development in Toronto, which makes up a big lion's share of money, but inheriting almost a $2 billion structural deficit, at some point something has to give.
Well, it's like the increase is going to be 10.5%. That's a huge increase.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, and especially in St. John's. I've never seen anything like that before here. So I'd reach out to the mayor and his councillors to really start. I remember years ago in the provincial government when they said, "Look, we've got to go line by line in our line items for the budget," and that's exactly what they did. And they found room to, without reducing services to any great degree, if any, they found room to roll it back a bit so it didn't hurt the population so much. And I think we've got to do the very same in our city this city, the people living in it, for the most part, are under a lot of pressure. Seniors, I have a mother that's living in her own place, and I have several friends. We've all reached into the 60s now, and our incomes are all changing dramatically to pensionable rather than what we normally earned. And then we got the younger people that are trying to stay around here, and we want them to. We need them to grow this city to the potential that it could be going forward. And I really think we've got to think about the cost of living here, and that's the key reason I'm calling.
There are some overlaps between the two cities that we're talking about. For instance, the lion's share of the 30% increase that I'm suffering this year is because of fleet management. The replacement of aging vehicles, snow clearing, ice management, garbage collection. When I speak to people who actually do fleet management for a living, logistics stuff, they talk about overturn should be like in the neighborhood, or turnover, in around 10% per year when carefully managed, as opposed to the whopping big increase we're seeing with the massive numbers that have to be replaced this go around. In Toronto, one of the things that when they talk about plowing snow is what they call a windrow. And, to try not to be blocking people's driveway the way that the side wing blocks our driveways, which costs about an additional $700 million or something, if I remember the news story correctly. So they're talking about doing away with things like that. That, $700 million inside the world of $1.8 billion. I suppose, just like how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. But anyway, I'm completely displeased with the increase in my taxes this go around, I can tell you that. So even if we focus in on the numbers of people working for us and how much we pay them, everything's got to be carefully evaluated. Final word, Sean, before I get to the news.
Yes, like on your point, and I take your point well in Toronto with that side plow and so on, and saving that kind of money. But, we didn't suddenly find out last week or last month or 6 months ago that we're going to have to replace these or the fleet or parts of the fleet. Like, obviously, someone's managing the fleet, and they can see that this is coming. So, do it in small little pieces, but not one large wallop right across the back of your head, it feels like. And all of a sudden, people have got to come up with such a massive amount of extra money because, like, most people don't have it. Like, they just can't go out there tomorrow and find another, $200, $300, $400 a month, a year, whatever it's going to be. It doesn't happen that way, Patty. So I really think that they should rethink that and take a lesson from Toronto.
Appreciate the time, Sean. Thanks for the call.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, let's get to the news. When we come back, we're going to be speaking with a restaurant owner, talking about the pending storm and what should be a busy night in a restaurant for Valentine's Day. And then there's someone there who wants to talk healthcare. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Jessica Holmes. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
I am a restaurant owner in Bay Bulls. I own Arbor Restaurant and Lounge. We are a craft cocktail, mocktail bar and restaurant. We are entirely sold out, we were entirely sold out for Valentine's Day tomorrow. And now with the impending storm, we are going to be forced to close for the safety of all staff and customers. So I wanted to come on and just talk about the industry and what this time of year really means to small local businesses. For Valentine's Day, and we call these milestone events in the industry, these are really the big events, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, St. Patrick's Day. Like, these are the events that really get small restaurants through the hard months. And when we run into weather issues that either cancel or postpone those events, restaurants stand to lose a lot of business. So I wanted to come on and kind of talk about what it means to us to have to cancel big events like that, and just to ask customers, if you do have a reservation at a small local restaurant and you can't make it tomorrow, please don't cancel your reservation. Just consider reserving at another time so that the restaurants don't lose out on this business entirely.
Yeah, I mean, One day I guess it was last week, the weeks all blending together now for me. When the forecast was terrible and nothing really happened, someone I know who owns a pretty big establishment downtown, a bar in this case, they did $58. So when the weather months are as tough as they are, and we know whether it be implications of increased taxes on beer or whatever else, there's some number in the neighborhood of 35-40% of restaurants that are on the verge of closing their doors. And that's not just going to jeopardize you as the owner, it's everyone you employ.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, operating costs this time of year are exponentially higher than they are any other time of year, just for, the colder months, heating costs alone. And then we're continuously seeing tax increases and increases on food and products. We also receive very little tax credits because the way that it's set up, we don't pay a lot of taxes on our food because a lot of our food is fresh food. So we don't get a lot of tax breaks as it is. So we rely so heavily on increased business around these big milestone events. And when we don't see that and we see cancellations due to weather, it can really be the nail in the coffin for a lot of local restaurants.
No doubt. Jessica, do you want to mention where your restaurant is and the name of it?
I do, yeah, sure. I'm the owner of Arbor Restaurant and Lounge. We're located in Bay Bulls.
Okay.
We're just over a year and a half old. We opened in August 22.
And so, tough time to open, just coming out of or wherever we are in the pandemic. I have no earthly idea anymore. So, what's the long-term viability look like when you have potential losses like Valentine's Day and the increased cost of goods? All your operating overhead has gone up appreciably in the last year and a half. So, what does it look like long-term for you? What do you think needs to change for you to be able to keep the doors open?
I think really, I've seen a beautiful change in the way that locals in Newfoundland are supporting small local businesses in recent years over, say, the bigger chain restaurants. I just heard while I was on hold, I heard that Tim Hortons, doubled their profits this year over last year, and to the tune of $700 and something million. So, and I'm not saying don't support big chain restaurants. I'm saying that these small local businesses with one sole owner who lives in your community, who raises children in your community, we need your help to keep our doors open. So if I could please just ask, if you have reservations at a local business for Valentine's Day, please don't cancel your reservation and just say, we're not going to go out this year. Please postpone your reservation, make a reservation at a different time, and continue to support your local businesses so that we can stay open.
Yeah, because Valentine's Day is a hallmark holiday. If you'd like to celebrate the love of your Valentine, that could be done on Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Jessica, how many people do you employ?
I have 14 employees.
See, that's not insignificant, right? Sometimes when we talk with the restaurant industry representatives and or individual restaurant owners, we'll get the predictable negative feedback. Well, your business model either works or it doesn't. But I think that oversimplifies a pretty complicated issue here in the country. And small businesses are, the insolvency numbers are real, and that includes a significant contribution from the hospitality sector, restaurants and bars and the like. So let's see if we, people can only be able to spend as much money as they have to spend. But if you're considering a night out, whether it be Valentine's Day or any other reason that you want to go out and celebrate, then, give some careful consideration to the restaurants. I'm not going to say please don't go to any of the national chains, but there are terrific locally owned and operated restaurants and bars and lounges that, just give it some consideration as opposed to the go-to that you see with the big glossy commercials playing on Hockey Night in Canada.
Absolutely.
Jessica, good to have you on. I wish you and your team nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you very much, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Here we go. Jessica Holmes at Arbor Bar and Lounge up in Bay Bulls. Let's go to line number 1. Roy, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
That's kind. Thanks. How about you?
Oh, good, buddy. Hats off to Jessica there. Great place to eat. I've been there, and as a small business owner, I know where she's coming from. Anyway, Patty, that's what I called it. But I called to throw the bouquet to the staff, doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, whatever at St. Clair's. I had a minor procedure done last week, and I hated to leave. I was treated so good, the care, compassion, professionalism. Man, oh man, oh man! I was there for 5 or 6 hours, and it was only a small procedure, and I was treated like I was having a heart transplant. I hated to leave. How many people says I hate to leave the hospital, but man, oh man, that's just like I said, I got to throw the bouquet for the way I was treated. God love them all.
How long were you in?
I was there probably about 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
It was only day surgery, but I mean, like the way they treated you, like making sure you're comfortable, and the anesthesiologist talked to you, and the doctor come out, and the nurses, and man, oh man, it's nobody can say anything bad about St. Clair's. I can guarantee you that.
Well, that's the good news. The concern people have, by and large, is just how long it takes sometimes to get into the system. But once they're in, the vast majority of people have a positive experience with the bedside manner, professionalism, and empathy shown by the healthcare professionals. Sometimes they get all swept up in the wait time issue, and all of a sudden everything's broken and people in the system are not doing their level best day in and day out, when in fact the exact opposite is more likely than true, because there are lots of good people working in the system.
I hear you 100%, Patty. It was 3 years waiting to get this procedure. Now, like you said, it wasn't, just something that needed to be done. A 3-year wait, and I guess it was worth the wait. Anyway, like I said, I got it done, and like I said, hats off to the staff, nurses, doctors, St. Clair's. Man, oh man, I'm very, very happy with it.
I'm glad to hear that, Roy, and I hope you're feeling well.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Patty. Have a great day.
The very same to you. Bye-bye. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. When we go back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Well, PC member for Fairland, Loyola Driscoll, had questions about the process and protocols put in place when the forecast is what it is for the metro region this evening, which is maybe between, a prolonged system sitting over us for a couple of days, 30 to 50 centimetres of snow. Wonder what the guidance is given to the depots. Joining us on line number 3 is the Liberal member for St. John's East, Kitty Vitti. He's the Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure. That's John Abbott. Minister Abbott, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy, and thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do it. So it's a pretty fundamental question being asked by your colleague. Is about exactly what's the guidance given to the depot and the operators when the forecast is what it is.
Well, the good thing in this case is we're obviously getting ample notice and warning that a snowstorm obviously is headed our way. Each of the depots then will be obviously getting ready. They'll be loading up their the loaders and sanders to make sure they got all the quote-unquote supplies on hand. Plows are ready, and then they will be called out and start their shifts as normal, and then as the snow continues, they will just be doing the roads as fast and as quick as they can. One of the things I just want to, for the listeners and those who are going to be on the roads, look, safety is paramount here. No matter how much snow we get, we can only do and push so much snow at any one point in time. And any of the routes, if you're, and I've seen this myself, where the plow is coming towards you, obviously he or she will turn that truck around and go back down that road. So you got to be time yourself when you're on the road. And given the amount of snow we're expecting, obviously people should be making plans to obviously stay off the roads for as long as possible, so that the routes can get cleared as quickly as possible.
So given the fact that this system is going to stall and hang over our heads for a couple of days, dumping however much snow we'll eventually get, does that mean that the plows and ice management will stay out as long as the snow is actually falling, or is there an end to a shift coming?
Well, they will continue to do their shifts. So in terms of, we have 14 routes that will be plowed 24 hours. So those are the main routes on the TCH and others. So they will be constantly plowed. For the other routes, they will do their shifts. There will be obviously some overtime probably incurred because of the heavy snow and replacement, but they will take a break in the middle of the night and then resume early in the morning and continue on. And then they'll manage that sort of route by route, depot by depot. So they'll make sure the roads are cleared. And of course, if there's any emergency vehicles that need to be on the roads, ambulance and fire trucks, there is a protocol that they would call the depot. The operators called out if they happen to be off shift. So we've got all of that mapped out and ready to go. No different than we do in any other year. As I said, we've got ample notice about this particular storm, so we will be ready.
I'd like to move back into the procurement. You and I spoke about it last week, the two new procurement strategies, Newfoundland Labrador First Procurement Strategy and the Sustainable Procurement Strategy. One of the key issues, of course, is the definition of what constitutes local to be able to be eligible for the 10% variance. Can the government commit to the fact that to be designated as a local bidder, they actually have to have a human resources presence here as opposed to simply a mailing address or what have you in the province? Because we do know that's where it gets a bit grey. So can the government commit to it? They absolutely have to have an actual physical presence here versus simply have done business here in the past and or having a post office box?
Well, one of the things we wanted to do is obviously make it more competitive for local businesses that have a presence here and obviously have employees here. So part of the sustainable procurement component is to get exactly at that, so that we can start building in that criteria that there has to be employment here. So if we want to make sure there's groups that are underrepresented, whether it's women or persons with disabilities or Indigenous, we can start building those into our tender. So we're very conscious of doing that. And the other thing I just wanted to respond to, I think MHA Part was out talking that we had overlooked the whole concept of apprenticeship and how we build that in. But in fact, the strategy is focused as well as making sure that apprentices are built into our larger projects. And we've, I think it's on page 9 of the strategy, it specifically speaks to ensuring that apprentices are brought in. So we are looking at this in a very broad manner, and I think we've got all bases covered. Not to say that there may be some areas that we'll need to improve as we go ahead. Meeting with the Board of Trade to go through this in short order, so that we make sure we got all interests covered on a go-forward basis.
Can you give us some specifics about the inclusion of apprentices? Because it's long been a problem, right?
Yes.
So to get an apprenticeship, you have to have, there's a certain number of apprentices can work under a red seal, under a journey person, which, some of the apprentices are being told, well, you need more experience, but until you get hired, you can't get the experience. It's been a real catch-22. So how specifically are we dealing with the apprentice issue?
Well, I just met recently with the Construction Labour Relations Association to talk specifically about that and how we can enhance that. If you look at some of our larger projects now, whether it's the Mental Health and Addiction Centre, apprenticeships are included there. There is a challenge because there is a shortage of skilled labour right across the board. So we have to be innovative in how we make sure apprenticeships are brought on, and that there are more, and that we go into the school system to really entice kids to think about skilled trades as a career. And so there's a lot of conversations and activity going on there, and we're focused in wherever we can in terms of our large construction projects to build in that component.
And as the Minister responsible for Public Procurement Agency, period, this is not to suggest you or the provincial government has anything to do with federal initiatives like the Arrive Can, but it does bring a heightened focus. So how attentive will you and your team have to be to paper trails, so that when questions are asked about who got the money, how it was spent, what was the output, a real paper trail, so we can follow right from going to tender through the final product, so that we have a great understanding of where the money went? Because in this example here, which I think is going to bring further focus to procurement, even at the provincial levels across the country, how attentive can you and your team be to that paper trail, so that when questions are asked, there's answers available, not head-scratching in grey areas and unknowns?
Patty, you're making a good point, and I'm always perplexed by the federal government and its challenges in procurement. And this is not the first time they've run into this this issue. And you don't really see that at the provincial level very often. We do make sure in terms of, and that's why we have a separate procurement agency. Their job is really to help and guide agencies, departments, and municipalities in how to procure, how to do that, make sure the paperwork is done, the follow-up, because at any point a particular procurement can be challenged by a quote-unquote unsuccessful bidder. So we make sure we have the paperwork and the processes as clear and as clean as possible. As I said, not to say there's no room for improvement, but we are constantly improving, and the two strategies we put out there last week speak to the need to do that as well.
I think these types of things, because when we even talk about the broad concepts of democratic reform, which may include things like first past the post, but it also includes trying to tighten up campaign finance laws. Curiously, we do a better job on the federal front than we do on the provincial front. It's a bit of a wild, wild west here, and that brings some real concern regarding procurement, doesn't it? Because you hear it as much as I do. Whoever made the donation to the party gets the contract. Now, some of that might be just the optics versus the reality. So in that world, because you'll be a minister directly involved with some of these concerns, do you think that there's work to be done to tighten up campaign finance reform here? Because it really does give governments an optics problem because of the obvious.
Well, I'm going to separate the two issues. In terms of procurement, there is no political interference. The fact that a particular company or individual donates to a political party has no impact or influence on the awarding of contracts, because our legislation is very clear and our processes are very clear on that. Yes, some successful bidders happen to also donate to a political party, but they are separate issues. I'm going to pass on the campaign finance reform for now, only because we are doing a consultation under the Minister of Justice and Public Safety, and everybody has had an opportunity, including myself, to weigh in on the things that we would like to see changed in our Elections Act, and so I'm waiting for that report to come out, and then we'll obviously have a large public debate around those issues.
Yeah, fair enough, but regardless of how the process formally works in-house, the optics are reality, and that's no more true in politics than in any other walk of life, because what people think is happening versus what actually happens might be two different things. You see the straight lines drawn all the time. A big piece of infrastructure gets built, the first thing that's sent to me via email or posted online is the contribution they made to the party or an individual candidate. So optics will always, rightfully or wrongfully, guide people's thoughts on the political process and the letting of contracts and up and down the line. And I look forward to the next piece of information, as you just referenced there, because I do think that leads to cynicism, skepticism, voter apathy, and apathy might be a politician's best friend, but it's not democracy's best friend.
No, I would agree. And in terms of, as minister responsible for procurement, I am held to account to make sure it is done right, it is transparent, and there is no political interference. So that's I'm held to account by the Premier and the Cabinet, and by the House of Assembly, and obviously the general public as well. I
appreciate your time this morning, Minister Abbott. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure is John Abbott, and of course, the Minister responsible for the Public Procurement Agency. Time for the news. When we come back, John wants to talk about municipal taxes. Shannon's in the queue to talk about health services in Bayverd. Don't go away.
Stay informed and have your say on the news of the day with your VOCM. Join Linda Swain weekday afternoons from 4 to 5 p.m. for an hour of talk and discussion with decision makers and listeners like you. News Talk on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. John, you're on the air.
Good morning, and thank you very much for taking my call.
No problem at all.
I just wanted to call in. I was listening to your program a bit earlier, and there was a gentleman came on. I think he's running as a candidate in terms of the St. John's area, and I'll just say out front there, I have no affiliation to the St. John's area in terms of my vote or anything like that. But he talked about tax increases in the city, and I was kind of disappointed with the fact that he took the idea to talk about the Muse Centre and the idea that there was an expenditure made to include a walking track and a steam room. And while I can't really tell you from a research point of view about steam rooms and their benefits from a health perspective, I can certainly say to you that it's well known about the benefits of walking, and especially for seniors who really find it difficult on our streets and so on. Walking tracks and things like that are important infrastructure in our city. And the thing I had issue with here with the gentleman's comment, and this is nothing against him as a political candidate, but I just want him to rethink the idea that saying something like, if we spend $10 million to put in something like a track, we could have saved that, and because we saved that amount of money, now taxes wouldn't have increased in, say, the St. John's area in this example. I'm a person who spent my life advocating for proactive health initiatives, and we need to build infrastructure. We need to do this kind of stuff so that we save on our chronic health care on the other end. And, besides just the savings in health care alone, whether this is a provincial decision or a federal decision or anything like that, I think here right now, besides the health end, we have to look at like employment for people in the area or people building homes in that area or wanting to buy a home. Like the fact that there's amenities there that they may want to avail of makes it more attractive, makes people want to be in your city, makes people want to be there to, be employed and spend in your city. So I just think that there are a whole bunch of things here that we need to consider rather than say, we didn't spend $10 million here, we did spend $10 million on this particular function, and because of that, he kind of implied that was one of the reasons we had to pay extra taxes in St. John's. I just had a bit of issue with that because...
I think Tom speaks to the broader control of spending. He used an example of the Muse Centre today. I've long said that I'm completely understanding and in support of recreational facilities, healthy lifestyle facilities for the obvious reasons. There are certain amenities that are just part and parcel with living in urban settings. Like I've got people still complaining that there's a skating loop in Bannerman Park. The amount of money spent on opportunities to get out, get some fresh air, do something like have a skate or roam around a park or go to the Muse Centre or the Aqua Arena or the Paul Reynolds Centre is part and parcel with living in these types of urban settings. I don't consider them to be a waste of money. Now, if we're adding amenities inside pieces of infrastructure that might be questionable, then let's have those conversations. But recreational infrastructure and healthy lifestyle infrastructure is pretty important stuff.
Absolutely. And I know you're a strong advocate for health-related issues, and I commend you on that, and thank you for that. And, we also have to consider that facilities like this do generate, I guess, even if it's a marginal revenue, to help pay for, again, the wages of people who will be employed there or for students who are looking for, part-time work and things like that. Many of us got our first ever employment chances in places like this. I just, for that particular political candidate, I just, would suggest here right now, it just is only from a personal perspective, of course, but, there are lots of ways to find money and to either complain or support the way funding is spending. But I would suggest that anything that's in a health proactive kind of measure, we really had to look at the benefits of doing that overall versus, thinking that we have to maybe eliminate those things so that we don't pay taxes, especially for our seniors who have, contributed to this province for a lifetime. And now maybe having something like that gives them an opportunity to maintain their mobility and health in a very safe and controlled environment. So I wish that person, honestly, all the success in the world as far as his candidacy goes. But please just choose another example if you're going after, where we're spending some of our taxation dollars and so on, because I think this is a valuable one.
I'll extend that one bit further because we've been talking about age-friendly communities. And, like Clarenville, which has that designation, and some of the issues that have to be considered when we talk about age-friendly, communal walking trails, accessibility for walkers and wheelchairs, and those types of things, they're just a big part of the issue regarding overall healthcare. And it's not just about sedentary lifestyle or diet or what have you. We even made that a topic regarding seniors and the potential for them to be lonely and to be self-isolated or live in isolation. Exactly. Because all these things come with an additional, and I hate to put price tag on it all the time, but of course we have to talk dollars and cents. If there's real serious health risks associated with loneliness and isolation, we've got to understand it and we've got to deal with it. So, and some of that is about communal opportunities for activity. So anyway, I'll just throw that tangential point in there.
Absolutely, and thank you for taking the time to hear my words, and I commend your station for having this kind of programming because it gives us all a chance to make sure we consider things from all sides. So you have a great day and all the best.
Same to you. Thanks for the call, John.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's keep rolling here. Let's go to line number 4. Shannon, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, how are you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Not too bad. Just wanted to take an opportunity to talk about the healthcare system in the Bayver Peninsula. I noticed today on your news outlet that David Demine, the CEO of the Eastern Health, is retired. So I'd like to wish Mr. Diamond the best of his retirement. But in the statement on your news thing, it noted that the Premier and Tom Osborne thanked David for his commitment in improving health care. It kind of preluded to my thoughts about why I wanted to call in this morning. I'm not so sure that the healthcare system on the Bayver Peninsula has been improved, much to the detriment of the people here. I think it's actually decreased in quality. To the point that I'm not a very public speaker, but I thought it was important to bring some of these issues forward today. Two instances that really hit home to me I wanted to bring to the public's light. In early December, I was playing hockey, and I conducted some kind of movement and felt that I had a tear or something, and over a couple of days of kind of pain in my abdominal area. People thought it might have been a hernia or something. So after 2 days of pain, I went to call up to the doctor, and there was no appointments available. So my wife suggested, I'm traveling to South America in a couple of weeks into a developing country. I should get my abdominal checked in case there's something serious there. So I went up and waited for 4.5 hours in the emergency room. Obviously, I wasn't a serious case, but 4.5 hours was a long wait. And there was one doctor on, and we did a physical examination, and he determined that, couldn't feel any signs of a hernia, which kind of created my anxiety a little bit. What other situation could that be? Was it something serious with my colon, or I really didn't know what it was. So after about a week, I made a virtual appointment because there was no availability here to a virtual doctor, and again tried to express the circumstances I was feeling, or the pain I was feeling in my abdomen, which was a bit hard to express over a virtual appointment. And I waited again, and then, a few days before I was leaving to go to South America, I said, there's something going on here. I went back, I met a friend of mine. He said, listen, there's nobody up at the hospital. I just came from there during Christmas holidays. There's a doctor on. Go up. And I went in the emergency room. 3.5 hours I waited to see the doctor. There was nobody else there. And by the way, I'm not discrediting the staff of any way, shape, or form of the Beaver Healthcare Center. I have a lot of friends and family that work there and understand the pressure they're under. But I didn't get any reprieve for my concern, and I had asked for, doctors or an X-ray or an ultrasound that can probably shed some light on to what the situation was. And I was deflected from receiving an ultrasound or an X-ray at the time, unaware of the reasoning behind it. And, so I passed it off. I've had some blood work done, and I'm waiting to go into get some further investigation done on the 23rd of February out in Grand Falls to see what's going on with this pain in my abdominal. But, that's me. That doesn't really hit home a whole lot. The more important thing that I wanted to raise awareness was last week, my 10-year-old son incurred an incident on a snowmobile with his brother. It wasn't an injury. They got stuck in the snow, and he kind of strained himself a little bit. And 10:30 in the night, he said, "Dad, I got a pain in my abdominal area." And so I said to his mom, we chatted. I said, "Well, bring him up to the hospital the next morning." And, we had a severe rainstorm or glitter storm pass through the Beaver Peninsula at the time. So the roads were pretty treacherous while she was trying to travel into Beaver in the morning to bring him up to the emergency. She had called ahead of time to see if there was a doctor on and wasn't confirmed if there was a doctor on or not. But she had to bring our son to the emergency room to see what this pain was in his abdominal area. And unfortunately, there was a doctor on at the time. There's only one doctor in Bayvert, and he happened to be on that day. And she called me at work, and she said, "We have to go to Grand Falls." I said, "Well, why we got to go to Grand Falls? We have to go for an emergency ultrasound." And I was a bit confused because, Bayvert has always had an ultrasound service. The community years ago raised money to provide that equipment to the Bayvert Peninsula Healthcare Center, and we don't have an ultrasound service. And I had to leave work given the road conditions. Major ice storm had passed through. It took me an extra hour to get to Grand Falls because of the road conditions, and we had our son seen by the technician in there, and thankfully there was nothing of concern. And it took me an extra 2 hours of normal drive time, Patty, to get back to Bayvert. And halfway home, I almost lost the car on the road. And the car went 90 degrees to the highway. And I'm driving home, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm saying, I'm driving my 10-year-old son an extra 4 or 5 hours for something that could have took 15 minutes in Bayvert. And I just reflect on that and I say, our healthcare system in Bay Verde is not good enough. I understand the province is struggling with how to manage the healthcare services that are provided. But, the Bay Verde Peninsula is here, and a year ago we had no doctor. And we had to gather as a community and protest and bring some light to the situation. We had no doctor. And, for a majority of the time, our health service center was closed. We had to be very careful how we managed what our children did in the daytime. I think about living in rural Newfoundland and all the benefits and the social development and the reasons why we're here. To be able to live free-spirited life and to be able to say to your kids, you can go out and do that or you can't do that because there's no hospital, there's no doctor on this weekend. If you cut yourself or something stupid happens, I don't know how we're going to handle it. And to me, that's not good enough, Patty. And, I think about the Bay Verde Peninsula, and, we're a community of communities down here, very active in the mining industry. The company that I work with employs about 100 people in the mining industry. Currently, there's about 200 miners working still down here with the tremendous potential in the future for further growth in the mining industry. And, we're a happening place, and the Bay Verde Peninsula is not going anywhere. And I reflect on that very deeply because about 15 years ago, I remember being called to a public consultation about how services might change in the future. And, the comment came up about resettlement. And I said at the time, Bay Verde is never going to resettle. We're a district in the province. We're a region that has an economic going concern in the mining industry and the fishing industry. And we're off the beaten path. But, the circumstances that are surrounding the healthcare in the province, I don't think that the healthcare has improved in the Bay Verde Peninsula. We're fortunate that there's been some virtual care provided through, doctor virtual care. Thank God for that. Because it keeps,
Yeah, one of the comments I was going to make is that, when you have a large industrial presence, that provides a different potential for serious injuries and what have you. So I'm glad you said that. Just a question, and I'm not sure if you know this, but with the ultrasound unavailable in that community healthcare facility, was it that they withdrew it in full, or there's simply no technician, or do you happen to know?
Well, to be honest, I kind of have some little knowledge about it, but my understanding is that there was unavailability of a technician locally, but that's I don't know if that's entirely correct. To be fair and honest, I think that the skill set is here in the peninsula, whether it's one or two individuals that have that training. But it goes back to, the amalgamation of healthcare services. And I think, if that skill set is here, that machinery and that service should definitely be provided here. And I think that can add to relieve some of the strain potentially in some of the central areas, whether it be Corner Brook or Grand Falls or Springdale. If there's big waiting lists for ultrasounds because of lack of capacity, I'm sure somebody that's got a regular appointment or an availability to leave Grand Falls and come to Bay Verde because it might mean that they can get their ultrasound sooner is no different than people leaving Bay Verde to go to Grand Falls for a regular type of appointment. So if there's stress in the system, if that equipment is available here, it should be utilized. If the skill set is here, it should be utilized. And it goes back to recruitment. If there's, ultrasound technicians in the province that are probably early in their careers wanting to develop some expertise or some knowledge, maybe they could decide to come to Bay Verde and enter their career path here if the availability was here. It goes back to the doctors, Patty. I think about, Memorial University, a highly recognized institution, and we have a number of doctors who graduate from that program. And from my understanding is that Memorial's tuition costs are probably more affordable than other institutions in Canada. Like, is there no way we can get some kind of internship program to get young doctors into the field if they're being studied at Memorial to go into these rural areas, even for a year, to relieve some of the stress in these places? We have to find solutions And I think that, when I think about Baver, we have a growing community here. This community is not dying. There was mining activity that subsided in the last year or so, but those mines, that activity is going to flourish again in the next year or two. And none of those people really left the peninsula. They just transitioned where they go to work. And, we have a big future here, and we need our healthcare systems to provide adequate service to this region. Because we need it. We're not going anywhere.
Fair enough. One way to expand doctors' presence into rural parts of the country is if Mons Medical School expanded what they call a practice-ready assessment program, because during that assessment, it's done in over a 12-week period, and it will take place in a rural setting, by and large. And so when a doctor gets a taste of a rural setting, whether it be Bayverde or otherwise, that gives you a better chance for that person to consider that as their home, to set up shop, hang out a shingle. So that's one thing that I think can be considered. You've had the last word of the morning, Shannon. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
I'm getting a bunch of notes about civil service bloat, what have you. By the most recent count, working for the federal government, there's 357,247 public servants, which sounds like a big number, because it is a big number. But here's a curious stat associated with that. The size of the public service in 2023 on the federal government front was smaller than it was in 1984. That's kind of a strange stat. Let's take our final break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the programme. Well, we don't have time to squeeze another call in here this morning, but John, recent caller, made some interesting points about how municipal monies are spent. Some people, when you talk about water supply, roads, snow clearing, all the obvious ones, garbage collection, how often the dump is open, versus the issue regarding recreational facilities, healthy lifestyle facilities. His point's well taken here. There are certain amenities that are going to be part and parcel with living in larger urban centres, and that will include pools and rinks and the like. So I completely understand where John is coming from here, because it's not just a place where you can have a kids' swimming party, right? It is facilities that are being actively used by people who are trying to remain active, whether it be as children and or seniors or anyone in between. So John's point well taken on that front. Speaking of amenities regarding physical activity, congratulations to the folks out of White Hills. The White Hills Resort opened up this past weekend to get the folks on these the slopes on their skis or their snowboards, and they also had a fantastic event for which I've seen some terrific video. It was the 50th annual Great Northern Concrete Toboggan Race. So almost 400 students from engineering students from about 16 universities across the country congregated in Clarenville, including representatives from Memorial University. So these toboggans are absolutely massive. Well, they have to weigh less than 350 pounds and carry 5 people, and they have to have a safety roll cage also installed, mechanical steering and a braking system. Apparently Memorial Sled shed one of its skis on the way down the hill, so they had to do some shimmying and some makeshift coasting to get through the finish line. So it looked like a fantastic event. And for many of those people that were there, it's their first time in the province, certainly their first time at the White Hills. So great event to kick off the ski season and snowboard season at the White Hills, and it was the first time in the 50 years that it came to this province. So there you go. All right, final check on the Twitter. We're VOCM Openline. You know what to do. Our email address is openline@vocm.com, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer David Williams, I'm your host Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.